All right. On the economy, a bunch of stuff's going on. As we said, there's data out from this morning. Go ahead and put up CNBC number 113 on inflation. Now, you, Dan and Sean, hold your horses. Let me get through all the economic news before you jump on this. Inflation picks up again in June, rising at 2.7 annual rate. Here's the way the Wall Street Journal framed the data. Inflation heated up to 2.7 in line with expectations. Pickup reflects potential sign companies are starting to pass tariff costs on to consumers. Of course, this has been the big concern. Also, the White House has continued to keep its pressure up on the Fed chairman to try to get him to resign. This is a tweet from James Blair, a deputy White House chief of staff. Now, in the Trump era, most people wouldn't bat an eye at this. In the olden days, when I started in the business, the notion that deputy White House chief of staff would tweet a photo of the Fed chair as Marie Antoinette would be unheard of. Of course, back in the days, we didn't have tweeting, but you get my point. And then, as we mentioned, the White House is pushing for this vote on this rescissions package, with some Republican senators still concerned about cuts to local public media as well as international aid. And this is coming to a head now with the president all in saying nobody better vote against him. And that obviously impacts the economy for a variety of reasons I don't need to explain. So, Dan, I asked the question I ask right now, which is, I ask all the time, which is, are the fundamentals of the economy strong or not?
Yes, they are strong, and that's the problem with trying to cut interest rates. I mean, if you cut interest rates, you are adding fuel to the economy. You do that when the economy is struggling. The problem is the economy is not struggling, and you now see inflation. You know, it's small, but look, this is what you do if you're an economist. You look for trend lines. If Trump got his way and we cut interest rates, and not just cut them, but had the lowest in the world, as he keeps saying, you are juicing something that is already pretty good. The problem for Trump is the economy's good, it's not great. And what he wants is great. He wants the greatest ever. So
I do too.
Yeah, but Sean, you can't get, if you have something that's good and you start slashing interest rates and you see inflation, it's actually worse than 2.7, because when they take out volatile food and energy, it was 2.9. So the challenge is the Fed keeps saying we want to wait to see if inflation settles, which is a good answer. So I think on the one hand, it's good for Trump that it's in a pretty good place.
First of all, look, it has settled. Number one. Number two, when you look at the other inflation indicator, what's it called, PEC or something, that's very low, much lower to 2%, which is where Powell has said that he wanted it.
They want it. Yep.
Trump's exactly right when he talks about, he holds up a chart. I mean, the Japanese, all of our other trading partners are much lower basis point wise. I mean, the bottom line is,
because they're not as good as us. We have, I mean,
I get it, but why
should we have a better economy?
Why should we have a worse system of lending than they do? I mean, to me, I get what Trump's doing. I think absolutely. Why would you want good when you can get great?
Because what you always try to thread is a good economy without inflation taking off, which is why when
and what's the core, by the way, the core of this, if you look at the report, is all housing. I mean, this is not consumer and durable goods for the most part.
Well,
this
I don't
is
know.
It is some. Yeah,
I haven't had a chance to go through
Point
it.
Three. Point three was durable goods. The rest of it was housing.
Well, again, look, nobody wants inflation to pick up. I believe that's bipartisan. And so you got to do everything you can. Look, we lost because it took off. So, I mean, you run the risk. Look, if you want it, own it. And if it surges,
and we will.
And if it surges, you know, you can talk to President Putin.
I will say two other quick points. Those headlines across the board are highly misleading. It's almost like the media needs at some point to be right. The idea that inflation surging is just not factually true. It's not what happened. It's not what the report says, and it's not only in line with expectations, but many of them called for 3.0. So to see it at 2.9 and 2.7, or 2.9 on core and 2.7 otherwise, is again just not an accurate representation of what the report said.
That's just not true.
What part? What did I say that wasn't true? What did
economists expected it to pick up from 2.4 to 2.9? It picked up from 2.4 to 2.9. You can say we shouldn't be concerned at 2.9, but to say that that's a miss, Fox News's headline, the Wall Street
hold
Journal.
on.
Those are not beacons of progressive policy.
Hold on. You know, the famous scene in Annie Hall where Woody Allen says, I happen to have Marshall McLuhan right here.
Ah, there he is.
All right. I happen to have David Bahnsen right here. David, could you adjudicate, clear up, and elucidate my two colleagues on what this data actually means, please?
Dan is trying to make a very good point here, but he's missing a certain fact that I think is affecting his conclusion. And that is that you do not cut rates when the economy is really good, when the rate is already at the neutral rate. Because they have a posture of tightening right now, I would advocate for them cutting rates, not out of an inflation issue, not because I think the economy needs to be goosed, but because there are elements in the economy that are rate sensitive that are hurting for no reason. There is not a need to have a tightening posture.
Such as, what are those elements?
Most of the issues are real estate related, is that they basically are freezing housing and they need to get mortgage rates down on the long end. But there's also a lot of floating rate corporate debt that is now hitting a reset. You got to remember 2020 and 21, a ton of corporate borrowers were buying at 3, 5, 6-year terms. Some of those rates are now resetting. And so I just think that the Fed is behind here. Now, I vehemently disagree with the way the president's handling it. The jawboning that undermines independence, I think, is the wrong messaging. But I don't believe it's true that we're sitting here for the first time in 17 years, 15 of 17 years, the Fed funds rate was at 0. And now we're saying, oh, well, they're going to risk bringing inflation back if the rate is 3.5% instead of 4%. The reality is that the Fed funds rate is not the inflationary mechanism whatsoever. And what we have to do is produce more goods and services. That basically is the most anti-inflationary thing we could ever do.
David, two questions for you. Thank you for all of that. First of all, is Sean right that CNBC and the Journal are being too negative in framing the number?
About the CPI?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that it's an overly negative framing. I think that they're both talking about a different element of it. The headline core thing alone is a big distinction because more or less you're going to get a delta between headline and core every month when oil prices go up.
Right.
And when oil prices go down, it pushes it the other way. And what you get politically, and I saw the right do this all through Biden, whenever there was a better number, they used the core number. And when it was worse, they used headline. That's what I think the Journal and CNBC are doing, is cherry picking here. To me, and Sean, you said PEC, it's the PCE, the personal consumption expenditures. That's the one the Fed looks at because it doesn't have a 40% weighting in housing the way that CPI does. And CPI isn't really measuring housing. It's measuring what they call owner's equivalent rent, which is a very lagging, difficult indicator to try to get to some element. If we were really looking at the true on-the-ground inflation level right now, it is below 2%. Yep. Goods inflation is at 0%. And there's nobody in their right mind that thinks rents are going up 5% a year. And that's the way CPI is measuring it, is 4.8% increase with shelter. And that's about 36% of CPI. So that's where I just think they're off in the way they're measuring it. They're behind.
Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the Two-Way community, never miss a clip. And you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.